Today's topic is, does God hide the truth? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In last week's reading, we saw that the great masters themselves counseled discretion in the dissemination of truth. The counter-argument is sometimes made, but the Lord doesn't hide. He reveals his beauty in the sunsets, his tender sympathy in the rain, his wrath in the thunder, his restless energy in the brooks, his power in the sunlight. There are exoteric truths, and there are also esoteric truths. There is that which is revealed impersonally and left up to us to interpret, such as the thunder and our perception of it as divine wrath, the rain and our perception of it as God's sympathy. But behind even God's most open expressions, there lies impenetrable mystery. The wind blows where it wills, said Jesus in the Gospel of St. John. You hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. And Sri Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, by me the whole vast universe of things is spread abroad. By me, the unmanifest. In me are all existences contained, not I and them. God's reality is hidden and cannot be understood by the reasoning faculty. India's Sankhya philosophy states frankly, Ishwara Siddha, God is not provable. A willingness to seek the underlying reality behind appearances is essential for those who would know God. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. I was reading a little bit more about what Swamiji said in regard to Jesus' words about the wind blowing where it wills. And Swami says, the spirit, like the wind, is invisible to human eyes. We know that the wind is blowing. We hear its sound in the trees. Similar is that man or woman of God. To those of only outward vision, they seem as though they are like other human beings. They walk, talk, eat, sleep, frown, laugh. But inwardly, there's a vast difference between those who have enlightenment and those who don't. And this was the part that I especially liked. Those who can feel the difference find inspiration in the very tones of the Master's voice. They recognize his consciousness in the subtle vibrations that flow from him. They thrill to the divine power behind his words. And that really explains how all of us who knew Swamiji felt around him. There was a thrill of just being in his presence, just listening to him speak. He had such a beautiful, melodious voice, which you can still hear on YouTube and hundreds of recordings. But that voice was just so magnetic. It was thrilling. We had a series of concerts in the early 1980s at Crystal Hermitage, where Swamiji lived. in the beautiful garden that many of you have seen because you go visit the tulips in the spring. But that balustrade overlooking this fantastic view, the swimming pool, the gardens, we would float little burning candles in the water of the pool and string lights, and it was just magical. And Swami would sing songs of India. He would sing some of the songs that he'd written, sometimes with tambura and drums accompaniment. It was truly astral to be there. I would pay any amount of money if I could be there right now and experience that again. And, you know, the next day after the concert, I'd see someone at the market or the mailroom, and I'd say, "We missed you last night. Why didn't you come?" And they would say something like, "Oh, it was so far to go from one end of Ananda to the other." I go, okay. Those of us who felt that thrilling vibration would run to be there. During the last few years of Swami's life, I noticed that there were just a few young people, and some older people too, but mainly I noticed these handful of young people. I don't know how they could afford it, but they managed to be on the same continent wherever Swami was. They followed him to India, to Italy, to America. Anywhere he was, they would go. And I thought, you're making the right choice. Even if your credit card bill is going way up, you're making the right choice. We have to put out that energy. We have to get ourselves moving to draw that grace that comes, that attunement, that magnetism. We have to get ourselves into the meditation chair. We have to bring ourselves to Sunday service. We have to put out that energy. And the other interesting thing about this reading is Swami saying that God is not provable. So we hear the wind in the trees. That's how we know that there's wind. We feel God's vibration in these masters and coming to Sunday service and listening to Swami's music in a million ways that the gurus have given us. It's like a vast banquet hall, just a smorgasbord of tools and things we can do and places we can go, things we can listen to, all kinds of inspiration. In fact, Ananda exists only to create inspiration. That's its purpose, so that people can feel what it's like, so they can be drawn up into that consciousness. The USA team in basketball won gold yesterday, and we watched a little interview that a sports commentator did with Steph Curry after he won gold, and it was so interesting to me because this commentator wanted to feel it, you know? He wanted to, so he kept saying to Steph Curry, "So what did it feel like to make that shot, make that winning shot, and then that other shot, and what did it feel like when you won gold?" And, you know, what are you going to say? It felt good, you know? It was really nice. And Steph Curry was very gracious, and he's very intelligent, well-spoken, but there are no words. He said it was very special It was, it was from his heart, but how can you express the dedication, the energy, the practice, the love of the game, the attunement, the being in the zone where you can just hit those shots? And he was saying, I don't think about it. I can't think. It's not of the reasoning faculty, like Swami says. It's being in that zone. And that's what meditation is too. It's being in that zone. We are friends with a young couple who just had a baby. And we performed their marriage, was it 5 years ago? Something like that. And they really wanted to start a family. And she had difficulties in her pregnancy. She had to have bed rest the last period of time. They had to do a cesarean section because she couldn't do a natural birth. The baby had to be premature. It's got a little feeding tube now. But the baby was born. It's healthy. It's beautiful. It's this darling little girl. And they sent pictures. And there's just this expression of so much joy. And she said, "We are in love." And that's the best words you can think of for that kind of situation where they've tried and failed, and finally they have the fulfillment of this great longing and love. But words can't express it. Words fall short. How can you express something that deep? And God is like that. It's so deep that the only way you can talk about it, well, there isn't any way. There aren't any words. In fact, on our path, we're encouraged not to speak about our spiritual experiences. For that reason, words fall short. There's no way to deeply express it. But even though God is not provable, our beloved friend Sri Yukteswar found a way. And he says, let me read this to you. After the mind has been cleared by kriya-yoga of sensory obstacles, meditation furnishes a twofold proof of God. One, ever-new joy is evidence of his existence, convincing to our very atoms. And number two, in meditation one finds his constant, instant guidance, his adequate response to every difficulty. So our job is to become still. As the Bible says, be still and know that I am God. There's no way around that. We have to be able to brush aside the thoughts, the storms of likes and dislikes, of desires and problems and issues and pain and all the different things that happen to us. We have to be, and I have felt this many times in life, we have to just put on our uniform and go into battle. There's just nothing else for it. We may fear that we will die. We may fear that we will meet a fate worse than death. But we just have to do it. We just have to put on the uniform and go in there. And a sort of funny story about that is that when I was just turning 16, I had just gotten my driver's license, and my aunt was a prominent realtor in the little town where I lived, and she knew everybody. Everybody knew her. And she arranged for me to have a interview for a job. And I drove the car, parked the car, walked up the street, was about to cross the street for my interview, and I froze. And I turned around and I walked back, and I just had to put on my armor. Davy wrote a beautiful book called Faith is My Armor about Swamiji. And I had to just marshal my courage and walk over there and do the interview. And it only occurred to me recently, that's how delusive the mind is. It only occurred to me in the last few years that there was no way I was ever going to lose that job. My aunt had set it up. He was doing a favor for her. Why was I scared? There was no problem. I had the job. And I've always wondered why they were like, oh yeah, hi, here, this is what you're going to be doing. And it was like, oh, okay. And we have to believe that this world is just like that. We think we're up against these insurmountable problems. We suffer, we ache, we have pain, we struggle, we do all these different things. It's all right. As Ananda Ma said, whatever happens, it's all right. It's all going to be okay. We will find that stillness, that peace, that attunement where God instantly tells us the right course of action, instantly fills our being so that there is no doubt that we are in His presence, no matter what happens. So let's practice that. That's the end game. We can be assured, just like I was, of getting the job, of getting the consciousness that we want. We just have to trust it and practice now. Practice. What would it feel like if I felt God in every second of life? What would it feel like? And feel that. Live in that consciousness that you have Him already.
This question that the topic asks, does God hide the truth? And the beautiful reading from the, speaking of readings, I'm supposed to do one because I didn't have a book up here. I had glass, I've got them here. All right, digress here for a moment and then I'll go back to the topic. This is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramhansa Yogananda. Flowers, cloud scattered skies, and all beautiful blossoming scenery, all these only suggest thy divinity. I enjoy them, I revel in them. But then they remind me of thee. In that remembrance, these mere, though glorious messengers vanish, and the beauty of my own beloved infinity enthralls me. That beautiful chant that we sang, do not dry the ocean of my love with the fires of my desires. that image, for some reason, captured me. I mean, the end of the chant, of course, segues beautifully with this topic. Hide no more, Lord. Hide no more. Leave me not, leave me no more. But the concept of the ocean of love, my ocean of love. When we think of love, and I don't know about you, but this has been my own experience and my own observation, is that when people typically use the word love, when Hollywood or Bollywood or, Tollywood, there's a whole bunch of different ones in India, but when they talk about love, when love is the theme of the movie, the story, the drama, whatever, it's all about me being loved. It's not about me loving. And there's a key there, because the one thing that God does not have is our love. God is a beggar in that sense. God is asking, seeking, craving the love that we can offer, and we just toss it aside lightly, never even think of it. It's like, what do you mean, my love? Ocean of my love? 5-gallon bucket maybe? I mean, pail? I don't know. What is it? What do we have to offer? It's like, we may feel like it's a thimbleful. But if it's whatever we have and we offer it willingly, then it becomes an ocean. And we can find God in that ocean. There's the beautiful Bible passage, the wind blows where it wills, and you don't know where it's coming from and where it's going. It made me think of an interesting little experience that I've had in life many times. Have you ever walked into a conversation of people that you know well and you're most welcome in the conversation, but you didn't hear where it began? You just arrive in the middle of it, and maybe somebody tries to catch you up, and chances are they probably don't, because it's too complicated, or it's a long story, or you can't tell a joke 3 times. I mean, it's like you miss the punchline or whatever. I mean, it's like you just to kind of catch it where it is. You don't really know where it's going to go either, because you just got there. Well, that's kind of what I'm gonna just broaden. Swami used to do this in amazing ways. His whole life was kind of an expression of what I'm about to try to do. Broaden the perspective. Think of this lifetime. We arrive on the scene in the middle of a conversation. A whole lot's gone before, and we don't really necessarily know what it is. It's on a need-to-know basis, and it's not necessarily all that helpful to know at this moment, all the stuff that came before. We can visit graveyards and we see all the tombstones with, ancestors or people from different countries, and and if you use your imagination, there's a whole lot of drama that went on. My visiting, Nirmala mentioned, we visited family, and you get, as people inch their way towards 3 digits, it's like you're getting up there. There's a whole lot in the rearview mirror, and we were hearing stories that we'd never heard before. I mean, it's some pretty interesting stuff back there. You realize that these were real people with real dramas, with real lives and struggles and so forth. My dad told this heart-rending story of going to the bank. He's a college student. He was like a freshman in college at the time. A little bit of a hotshot, a little bit full of himself, because he was pretty hot stuff in high school. He was the class president. He was the star of the basketball team, etc. He goes off to college. First kid out of 7 to go to college. He comes back, goes to the bank with his mom she had these certificates that they had been given. They had their money in the bank in 1929. He was born in 1929. Had the money in the bank collapsed. When there was the run on the banks, they lost everything they had. And they got these little certificates saying, you have so much ownership of the bank or so much whatever. Well, anyway, they went to cash these in. And the bank manager just looked at them, and I mean, he didn't sneer exactly, but the energy was basically that. It was like, those things aren't worth the Kleenex in the box, basically, is what he was saying to them. And, you think about how sort of miserable that would have felt. I mean, he's recounting this just as if it just happened. And, there's this, so I mean, there's all this drama that's gone before. And, we don't see the future necessarily. Some people do. Sometimes we have dreams that show us a little bit about the future. But there's this immediacy to where we are now. We don't necessarily know where we've come to. We don't necessarily know where we're going, but we have this moment. We have this lifetime. So, okay, I'll go broaden it yet one step further here. I was reading this past week a scientific study or realization. This is going to sound really weird, but scientists have figured out that they do not understand why we have a universe at all. Why did it even happen? Why did it succeed? Because according to the math, it shouldn't have. The Higgs boson, I'm going to go all physics on you here for a moment. For those of you who've tuned into this sort of thing, some years ago, the collider in Switzerland and France, the super fast atomic accelerator, CERN, they just finally discovered this little particle. Well, it was called the God particle, which is a little bit crazy, but because many of them are atheists. But anyway, it was called that because that particle comes out of a field, and the Higgs field is what creates mass in all particles, whatever their stripe, name, size, momentum, etc. Well, that field apparently is not fixed, which means that it could change, which means that the universe could disappear one fine day, which got me to thinking, gosh, what if that's the way the universe ends? Is God just decides, we're going to change that field, and everything suddenly has no mass. There's just like zero. But think about it. Scientists don't know where it came from. They don't know where it's going. All they know is, well, we've got this reality. I mean, the thing was much more nuanced than that. Part of the reason why they couldn't figure out why the universe exists at all is because, according to the math, there should have been this sea of tiny, tiny black holes, like creating little bubbles. They described it as like soda that's been shaken up inside the bottle. These little tiny black holes, 1 gram each, just covering the whole universe, which should have affected the Higgs field and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'll end my physics discourse since I'm way out of my pay grade. But it's fascinating that scientists themselves haven't even figured out something as basic as gravity. Why does it work? How does it work? What even is it? Yes, they know it's an attractive force. We see the effect, but we don't necessarily see the cause. Now, when I was a kid, on one of our summer vacations, we went to Minnesota, and we went to the what do they call it? The source waters of the Mississippi River, which turns out to just be this little funky pond. But, from that pond literally begins the mighty Mississippi River. I mean, at the time, it's just this little thing that's, the pond is about as wide as those chairs. I mean, the stream coming out of it is, 10, 15 feet wide. I mean, it's kind of nothing. Well, the beginning of something may not look like much. Another example that strikes me, have you ever seen the birds that fly in this tight formation? And there's this cloud of birds, and they're doing these amazing maneuvers back and forth and around. they did a freeze frame, high-speed video where you have like 4,000 frames a second, and they spotted one bird changes, and everybody starts following that bird. It's just like if you can narrow it down, you can theoretically even figure out where the wind came from. But what is it going to do for it? It's like it gets narrower and narrower and narrower because you don't know. It's this flow of energy. And the only way to tune into it is in the heart, in that ocean of love. Nirmala was talking about this couple who are in love, and it struck me as she was saying that that's our mission. Our mission is to fall in love. It sounds kind of simple. I mean, we've all, you see movies, you read the novels, etc. I mean, there's all kinds, it's all around us. It happens to us. But we have to cultivate that love, because God doesn't come down out of the sky and beat us over the head and say, you have to love me. It's up to us to offer it willingly, to even realize that we could. This chant that we sang is on a recording that Swamiji made. Kriya-yoga chants Yogananda. And it goes on and on and on. And he changes the words and he changes the melody a little bit here and there. And it's just this magnificent call of love to God. And I'll just echo what Nirmala was saying. We have such a gift in that example that he gave us, all that resource that he gave us. But ultimately it comes to each one of us to just cultivate that deep yearning, that deep desire for God. I mean, does God hide the truth? Well, yes and no. I mean, truth is staring us in the face all the time. In another way, it's a matter of opening our eyes to actually see it, to actually perceive it and recognize it and cultivate our awareness of it. When we do, this world completely changes. We live in that ocean of divine love, and we all have it. We just don't necessarily know it or haven't necessarily tuned into that potential in ourselves, but it's very, very real and very, very true.